Wait, so what? Tell me, what was your major in school?
Oh yeah, so I went to Berkeley, and I was a media studies like communications major.
First
And
off, I had no idea you're in Los Angeles, so you're super close to me.
oh yeah, dude. Well, I'm in like the Burbank Glendale border.
Dude, that's I figured you were based on your level of wholesome, not based on looks. Don't take this the wrong way. Like more Midwest. I get that sort of sensibility, but Burbank, if you had to put a place in Los Angeles to place you, that makes the most sense. Dude, I grew up in Burbank. And
Oh
I'm in
really?
kind of Glendale area right now. So this feels really weird. It's like texting my girlfriend in the other room where like we're basically a few blocks apart, but we're zooming right now instead.
Dude, that's incredible. Yeah, I live. The joke I make is I live in the shadow of America's largest IKEA. So like I'm right there.
Because
You know where I am.
Burbank's claim to fame. We've got like 16 different major production studios and then the iconic Disneyland of Swedish furniture.
Yeah, yeah, and meatballs.
Of course. So
Yeah,
Berkeley, I don't even think of that as a media studies, but you went there for media?
yeah. Well, I went to so I didn't go to college until I was in my mid 20s. So I in during high school I was terrible. I was terrible at school. And so when I graduated high school, it seemed like school would just. I was like, we've done this. We've done this for about 13 years now, and it hasn't gone well. So I don't think more of this is the thing I should be doing. And so I was actually I went to high school in Ojai. And so I left Ojai and I moved to LA when I was 18. And I was in a punk band, hardcore band for about 5 years, touring the country. And then when that washed up, I was like, ah, shit, I got to be a real person. And so I started going to LA City College, and I started like at the bottom. Like I was taking remedial English classes and freshman year of high school algebra classes, and 2 years there, 2.5 years there, I made it. I transferred. I was able to transfer to Berkeley, to UC Berkeley,
Sorry, I
and I,
just realized my mic was like totally not pointed towards me. I am the worst podcaster in the world. You can hear me all right still, right?
I can hear you. Yeah, yeah,
I assume this is coming out of the right speaker, but we will
yeah.
know when this is all recorded. Hey,
Yeah.
I want to pause you right there because I'm picturing just like this angsty Blink 182 guy who's begrudgingly going back to school like real life. Did you feel like you were just kind of sad to leave the punk rock life, or was that just a life that you had lived and you're ready for the next chapter?
No, it was an absolute failure. I thought I was going to be. So when I was 16, my mom bought me this book called Get in the Van by Henry Rollins, which kind of is his trajectory in the band Black Flag and documents his whole life on the road. I was like, oh, this was the first thing I saw where I was like, okay, this is actually what I want to do with my life. Like, this is who I want to be. And so at like 23, when my band kind of imploded, and like we were as successful as you can be without actually being successful. So like we were touring the country. We were living in Nashville at the time, which at the time like 23 felt very old. Like I felt like I had aged out. Hilarious now. But at the time I was like, oh, it's done for me, dude. It hasn't happened by 23. Like I'm cooked.
I have to think, especially coming from the musical world, because you see so many very young stars make it, and that's your constant barometer for success is, oh, I'm 20 years old. I'm an old man. I don't have it now. I'll never have it.
100%. And especially at that time, there were so many. There's a great book by this guy Dan Ozzi called "Sellout," which kind of documents the generations that were like right before my band that were making it, and that's a story. They were like high school bands, and suddenly like they had this. They're like 19, 20, getting these like $1 million deals, and we were on that road. Like we had been meeting with these major label people, which is also not very punk rock, but at the time we were like, dude, this is cool. Like somebody's telling you you're going to be the next dot dot dot, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to be the next dot dot dot. Like that's who I am. And it's also like affirming you're a young person. It's affirming everything that you've ever believed about yourself, right? And so when the band actually broke up, it was I attribute it's this very similar to I think, and this maybe I don't want it to sound insensitive, but I talk to like young Mormons who lose their faith and on their mission, right? And they like come back and they're like, oh my god, and they have this whole crisis of faith. Like that's how I felt, where I was like, wait a minute, like this whole thing that I had built for myself like a reality. Um, like it, the idea that it could not be true was never that was never even on the board. And so, but it kind of broke me at the time. And so I was like, well, gonna be a regular dude now.
Yeah.
And so,
Were you an only child?
yeah. How did you know?
Because I resonate with this on such a level. I'm guessing your parents were pretty supportive of this endeavor.
Yes and no. My mom was super supportive. My parents were divorced. My dad, initially, my dad was not very supportive. Um, but there was a lot tied up in that. For context, I'm 42, so I graduated high school in 2001. So, um, as I'm making this decision to do this, 9/11 happens, and we start going to war. And my dad's like, oh shit, there's going to be a draft, and you're an able-bodied young man, and you know what I mean? You're kind of primed for this. Like, you need to be in school, dude. You need to be doing stuff to protect yourself. And I was like,
Terrifying.
yeah, it was an interesting time. And I didn't really take it very seriously. And for better or worse, I that never ended up being my reality. Um, but like in context, now that I'm a dad, I have a lot more empathy for where he was at in that moment. You know what I mean? But at the time, I was like, I was so pissed. It's like, how could you not? Because my dad's an artist. My dad he's a sign painter for the movie industry, and TV. And then
Back in the good old days when they'd actually paint those posters.
yes, and it wasn't just an AI generated background.
Incredible.
And well, now they print that stuff out as well. But my dad still is actually pretty active, and there are a lot of people that are still in the industry who are still devoted to the craft. So
Are they still doing that from like a design perspective, where a studio will come out to them and have them actually design the artwork? Is that kind of more the?
yeah, yeah.
Because I thought you were more speaking of you must in Burbank how they have the Warner Brothers studios. I grew up right across from Warner Brothers studios. They have those massive. They must be like 40 feet tall, and I would see from the beginning to the end of the day somebody actually go in there. They were just using a stencil, but they'd with paint draw out like the Ally McBeal episode series
Dude, that
show.
was my dad.
Incredible.
Yeah, that was my dad. He did that. So yeah, so
Wow.
that was something so like he was hanging off of a scaffolding off the building. Like just most recently, he repainted the Paramount Tower.
Well, so cool.
Yeah,
So
so
it's interesting. There's like that creative side that you've got in the blood, but it's also, hey, I have a structure to my life. I am not just going to be touring 6 months of the year and then I don't know where the rest of my money's coming from.
well, yeah. I mean, when I would come, I waited tables full time when I was at home, and I mean, since I was 16, I'd had a job, and so yeah, I was just I was pretty buttoned up as far as that's concerned. I grew my parents were always really hardworking folks, and so I grew up with a real sense of like the need for financial stability in some sense. I was never really comfortable being like just totally shoving off until recently, until about a year ago. Yeah,
40 is going to be the year for you.
yeah.
What is what is it like being an only child growing up? I was also an only child, but I don't have a lot of vision for what it's like being in somebody else's shoes. Do you think that really influenced your confidence in yourself growing up and just like your self-talk that you developed at an early age?
So it's a mix of things. I should say my dad had I have a half sister that my dad had when I was like 15, 16. So she's like it's just another life basically, and she's a very lovely person, but we're literally different generations. And so yeah, so I grew up mostly as an only child. Very young parents too. My mom was 23, my dad was 26, I think. And they were like they moved to Hollywood to be like kind of rock and roll socialites. Like my dad was an artist. My mom was, at the time she was a model, and then she became an artist rep. And worked in that. Ended up being a producer and all this kind of cool stuff around, photography. But yeah, no, I just had so much time, but especially being an only child of divorced parents, there's just so much time on your own. And I think that my zero, my neutral is me sitting in a room by myself, like tinkering, like I love being social. I love talking to someone like you. Like this is like my wife, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm on a podcast. It should be like, 30, 45 minutes. She's like, okay, an hour, hour and a half. And like, cause that's just I love this, but, um, yeah, my neutral is me sitting in a room by myself with some shit and my imagination and like tinkering.
This is a superpower.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did you ever wish you could have had siblings when you were younger?
Constantly. Absolutely. Yeah. Because it's super lonely. And we never lived in a neighborhood that was really rich with other kids. And so it was like, it's a lot of why I skateboarded. I think skateboarding was really important to me when I was a kid. And it was because it was just a thing. It was a sport I could do. It's like, it was like throwing a ball with no one else to catch it. You know what I mean? It's like, I could just do this for hours. I could just, throw a ball against a wall basically. Yeah, yeah. So I think, and of course, like, yeah, I tell people this a lot, but like skateboarding was a huge influence in my life, and I think a lot of that had to do with the idea that I didn't need a teammate to go do it.
I'm
Yeah.
a single sport sort of gentleman myself. It was actually from, God, 8 to 14,
Yeah.
professional skateboarder for a
Oh,
brief
wow.
period of time, much to my father's pleasure, professional golf too. I wanted to, like, that was where I had my sights aimed towards for a good
Dude.
portion of my life. So all of my summers and weekends were spent on the golf course, but I would join like a Korean couple to go play 18 holes, but it was just me in my lonesome. And that
Yeah.
was my happy place.
Yeah. That's hilarious. That very much. I used to live right down the street from LA City College, where there's a huge driving range. And like that's very much the culture there. It's a lot of because it's Koreatown, so it's a lot of Korean families and Korean businessmen going and hitting balls at the driving range. Uh,
Did you
yeah.
ever in your skate life were you mostly street or did you ever hit the vert skate parks?
Oh no, I was just a street skater. Yeah, we didn't have. I grew up in a pretty small town, and so it's funny. When I was in high school, it's kind of a cool story. I got a ticket for skateboarding in our called it was called the Arcade, which is basically just this like downtown center area where skateboarding wasn't allowed.
Way the most punk rock thing, you got a ticket for skateboarding. Taking it to the man by four wheeling it.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I was stoked to put that notch on my belt, but also um, you know we didn't have a ton of money, and so my mom was like, "This is a fucking $60 ticket because you like you know what I mean,
60
degenerate."
bucks? Just you were skateboarding in the wrong area. You weren't allowed to skate. That was what the deal was.
Yeah, yeah. So like in our downtown, just on the sidewalks and stuff, there was this whole there was just no skateboarding allowed in the parks and stuff downtown, and there was nowhere for us to go, and that was the thing. And I felt, it's very funny now, but I was like, being I'm getting in trouble for not drinking and doing drugs and being a delinquent. Like I'm getting in trouble for doing this hobby because I don't play football, because I don't do these sports. Like I'm getting in trouble for not assimilating. And I was very I was very entitled, which was it worked out in my favor in this instance. And so my mom said, "Well, like what do you want to do about it? Because like $60 is kind of a lot of money. Um, how do you want to address this?" And I was like, let's go to court. Let's see if I can get them to drop it. So I go to court, and of course not. I was 100% breaking the law. So it's like, and the signs were very clear. But I got put into community service, and then through the community service to pay off the ticket, which was cool. I just like picking up trash. I was actually picking up trash with a cop, and the cop was like hanging out with me all day, and he's like, "Man, you're a really bright kid. There's a group that you could be involved in that's working to like petition to get a skate park built in town. Do you want? I can introduce you to them." And I was like, "Yeah, like that sounds awesome." And so through this group, it's called the Ojai Valley Youth Foundation. I worked and petitioned, and then I ended up getting on the Parks and Recreation board in our small town. They had a youth representative, and I petitioned to get on there. And I eventually we got a skate park built in my town, which was super cool. It happened the summer of my senior year. So like, as I'm leaving town and I'm watching this like new generation hit the skate park that I worked my ass off to get built. And the skate park is still there, which is super cool. And kids, it's like now within the area. It's a famous skate park, so it's cool that happened. But yeah, that was also an introduction to for me to like, if you want to change something, you can just go do it.
So cool.
Yeah, super cool.
I get a little nostalgic when I still see kids like in the 10 to mid teenage years skateboarding in public. And it might be at a bank building where they have the little rivets on the benches, so you're not supposed to be doing grinds and like ollieing up on them. And I was
Yeah.
like, yes, I love to see that, sticking it up to the man, but I don't know if it's mainly just because you don't see it that often, that I know that most of their peers are probably inside. You get
Yeah,
that feeling at all, like when you see kids actually
all the
doing
time.
things
Yeah, it's the same.
outside?
Yeah, all the time. I think it's so cool. A Yeah, and then now as a parent, my kids don't love skateboarding, which is like, I mean, they're little, they're too young to really get it. But my I have a friend who's still a professional skateboarder, and he bought them skateboards for Christmas, or gave them skateboards for Christmas a couple years back, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be the moment, and they didn't take to it, which is fine. They might do it later, but I see my friends' kids going to skateboarding camps and like doing stuff like that, which I think is really cool, but also like I want them to have the experience of discovering it for themselves, of like that like moment where they're like they love it independently and passionately. Yeah.
How do you craft that as a dad? Because you can't really be the one to tell them to, here is your skateboard, enjoy.
Yeah, that's actually, it just requires, it's really interesting you mentioned it. It requires, I think, a lot of patience. I think people you have to just provide the space and the resources and make yourself available. And then when they come to it, they come to it. If they come to it. Like
Well, I,
that's how I feel about my kids with jujitsu. Like jujitsu is something I'm super passionate, still super involved in. And the last thing I want to do is, and my son, last year, he he was taking jujitsu classes at my gym, and we also have mats in the garage, and we can train anywhere, anytime. Super privileged, awesome thing that we have. And he was not enjoying it. He just wasn't having a good time. And there's a lot going on with the school year and stuff. And this is kind of a common, kids his age, this is a very common thing. They start doing something, they get like 6 weeks into it, and then they don't want to do it anymore. And you as a parent need to decide, like, is this the thing that, like, do I teach them stick-to-itiveness and like how it feels to like go through the fire and feel good on the other side? Or is this the thing that we just say, hey, you know what, man? I don't want you to feel like the only way you can emotionally connect with your father is by participating in a hobby that he is, passionate about. You should be able to not do this if you don't feel like doing it. And so at that point, it was like, you know what, man? If he decides to come back to jujitsu, or if he just wants to roll around and play and wrestle in the garage, that's what we're going to do. I'll teach him some core competencies around this. If he wants to come back to it, he can come back to it. But I'm not going to force him to do this. So I don't know. That's a long-winded way of saying, I guess it requires a little bit of patience and grace.
yeah, and I don't like that. That's what scares me about fatherhood is like it's so much of you just gotta be in it and you gotta feel it and hope you don't fuck up your kids in the process. If I
Yeah.
could have you do some like back of the cocktail napkin math, what would you say the percentages of modeling good behavior? I am going to skateboard and you'll see the enthusiasm that I have for it versus dictating the behavior. You need a hobby that involves nature and sunlight. Here's a skateboard and do what I say. What's the percentage there?
It's a good question. So I mean, I still would argue I'm in early innings. My kids, my oldest is 6, my youngest is 3, and so
Boy and
right
girl?
now,
Or boy
what
boy?
two boys, two boys,
Yeah.
and so right now, I would say it's 75-80% modeling. It's just like, hey man, and also like this is what we do. Like if we're a family, like this is like when you get when my 6-year-old gets home from school and I get done working, which is pretty early, we go outside. That's just it, And like, and if we play video games, we play video games together. And like, if it's like this isn't right now. It's all about it's all about sort of developing a ritual and a lifestyle that they can see and emulate and find comfort in. And so hopefully in the future, they're like, oh yeah, this is my comfortable place. This is my happy place of going outside and kicking a ball and playing make believe and pretending I'm an imaginary superhero and us like just jumping around in the backyard, like giving them the space to do that. And then in that, because of that, sometimes you got to be the guy who also plays the superhero. So yeah.
Have you seen the repercussions of what it's like if you are the one to tell them to do something and that having a backlash?
Yeah, I mean, with my kids, and I don't know if this is the case with everybody, but like they are who they are, and they're like I can take them 5 degrees to the right or to the left, but I'm mostly here to facilitate them coming into their person in a safe way, like in a way that like allows them to fully be the person who they kind of already are. That's kind of how I feel about it. So when I try and steer too much, it's it could be disastrous, but also at the same time there are things where it's like we got halfway through the soccer season, and this last soccer season my son's crushing. Like he doesn't know he's crushing. He's like whatever, like I go do this thing and like my team happens to win every game, and you're like you don't realize that you're winning every game. You know what I mean? But and he's like, man, I don't want to go to soccer anymore. And I'm like, well, buddy, we did commit to like 3 months of this, and we are 2 months in, so we're gonna finish because you need to finish things, and it's important to finish things. And my wife, and also, my wife's parents never made her finish things, and she resents that. And so, we as a team, as a unit, talk about like, okay, is this gonna be the thing we push on? This is the thing we push on. And when he finished the season, he was so happy he finished. And so, it's deciding what resistance you're willing to deal with and what resentments you're willing to deal with to offset other resentments, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I built up a lot of resentment towards my parents in childhood, especially my father. We had a difficult relationship, but just in hindsight, I know so much of my character was built out of those moments where he was just having me do stuff that I didn't appreciate the value of at the time. And for the most part, I'm not sure there was a lot of value in the actual interpretation as a kid digging ditches. Like, you could do this so much faster if you did it on your own, Dad, and I know that for a fact because I have half the size of arms as you do. But I think what that instilled in me to this day is when I put something on my to-do list, it's like this, fuck, I know I have to do it. It is committed to the decision being made. It is good as done. And that's a hard thing to learn or to instill on if you don't have the courage and the confidence in yourself to know like, oh, that's just simply something that has to be done now.
Are you a list guy?
You have no idea. Hardcore.
Okay.
You can say it's a level of autism sort of list making.
Okay.
But
My
yeah,
mom,
list
my
guy.
mom used to say there are like two people in the types of people in the world. There are the people who make lists, and there are the people whose lives depend on the people who make lists. And like,
Yeah,
my mom was a list maker.
it's
I'm
the yin
not.
and yang of life.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
And
not.
and
I'm not. But sometimes I am. I'm actually in this weird gray area where I have a list. There's a list running on in the background of my head all the time, and then I think that if I was more Michael and I sat down and was like I wrote my list and hit it, that would actually soothe a lot of the anxiety that runs in here about the list and prioritization and stuff, because
yeah,
it's a force function. Have you read the Checklist Manifesto? Oh, dude, you'll love this book. There's basically a doctor who's noticing a ton of sort of unforced errors in the emergency room. Sorry, not in the emergency room, in the OR, the operating room, and just like there's all these kind of things that are happening, and he's like, well, surgery is complex, but there are things that are far more complex than this, where the error is far smaller, and so he goes to study these rocket scientists, literally like how they build rockets, and he's like, they make lists. Very like but everything is documented on the list, and the list is respected above everything else. And so he's like, well, what if we created a list for the OR? I know this sounds silly, but it's like, obviously. And it's like things like, scrubbing down and washing your hands, but also things like learning everyone's name. And like, I would say a lot of it is attributed to having a list, and a lot of it is attributed to what is on the list. And it was just tremendously successful in bringing down the fatality rate of people in surgeries. And the list, their checklist, ended up being adopted by the World Health Organization as like the standard practice for hospitals all throughout the world. But like checklists or making a list, it's so silly because you're like, I don't need to write it down. I know I'm going to do it. But the act of writing it down and like we're just the act of respecting it, I think has a great power to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's different ways to interpret this conversation we're having. People hear the checklist, and there's certainly the kind of person out there. They're probably not even listening to a podcast on productivity and to just gentlemen talking about their feelings. Like that's not our tribe anyways. But there's the lazy group who just like checklist. Couldn't be me. I have nothing to do. And if I do have something, I'll handle it later. But there are the like two categories of really high achieving people. And I, depending on what mood I'm in when I'm waking up, have so much to do. The power of the checklist is to, rather than ambiently feel like I just must be productive, it gives me the permission to end at a certain point. Otherwise, like the missus in my life, who's not a checklist person, is also like super type A, has to have so much done constantly, but doesn't have the checklist running. So even if she's theoretically finished her day, there's still so much more to do.
Yeah, I'm trying to, and I don't mean to be rude to anybody who's listening. Well, this is recorded in perpetuity. The ambient, what did you say? The ambient feeling of needing to be productive is such a relatable sensation.
Huh? Don't steal that idea from me. I'm going to make that video right now before you, God damn it.
I know. I think you need to make it's your video. It makes way more sense for you to make it. But I need that for me. Just that's a great, man. That's such a great insight because that articulates the feeling very well of just being like, I have to be productive. And it's like, no, you didn't define what productivity is or like what you
That's
actually.
exactly right. I think there's a lot of creatives out there. I was in the film industry for 15 years before I went into this influencer life myself. And all us creatives really romanticize this muse that is unspeakable. It comes to me whenever it blesses me and not something that I can manufacture. And God forbid I write it down. But I think at the end of the day, we all have tasks to accomplish, and just being able to prioritize, create a hierarchy of the things that I need to accomplish at a certain time during the day, surprisingly has allowed me to open up to the muse a little bit more frequently with respect. Like I respect my time, and therefore I think I am graced with the opportunity to give my creativity what it's worth, like its due diligence, rather than just being a chicken with my head cut off constantly.
Apologies for the sounds of the children squealing in the background. I am present. Hopefully it doesn't bother people listening. There's this, that's such a great way of giving it space, right? Like otherwise it doesn't have space. It's like cluttered in the mix of everything else that you need to do. There's also this great, and I like that John Darnell, who's the lead singer, the creative mind behind the band, the Mountain Goats, he was interviewed and they asked him about like writing. And I very much believe this is he's like, I think we have this like weird idea about the muse and about writers in general that, we are somehow in a class of people that can communicate directly with the creative powers that be, and that we just kind of like that it comes to us in this magical way, and we have like tuned ourselves to do this. And he's like, writing is like, it is blue collar work, and sometimes the muse speaks to you, but very, very rarely. Like it's really about sitting down and doing the work most often. And if you sit around and just wait for inspiration to find you in this like magical way, like that's never going to happen. And so like I think most people would be like, but wait, if I write down, maybe I don't feel like writing at the time that I put myself down to write, or maybe it's not within the, you know what I mean? It will become that. Like, I'm actually curious about your process. Because for me, the writing is in the writing. So it's like when I actually sit down and am tinkering and doing the work, that's when like the magic happens. And often it happens like I'll, as I'm drifting off to sleep, I'll have an idea and I'll get up and I'll write it down and I'll come back to it later. But for me, like so much of the fun of it, I guess the writing is in the rewriting. So much of the fun of it is in trying to take that idea, that thing, and make it resemble what it actually feels like. And that's like hammer and nails, dude.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that oftentimes the writing process is just you have your tools, either a laptop or a pen and paper, and that's your shovel. And your brain is just like a patch of dirt. I'm going to continue with this like super blue collar analogy. As I
Yeah.
mentioned, I was a hole digger in my youth, and I still consider myself that. And I see this patch of land, and I take a shovel and I just start digging, and I kind of just generally know there's something there. And maybe I uncover something that's like a cool idea, like, oh, ambient productivity. I like that felt like a big rock. But now I need to excavate, get some smaller tools, and maybe a rake to kind of like comb through the gravel and shit. It's kind of how I think of the writing. One thing I'll play devil's advocate on, because I see all too often people lump themselves into two categories. I must be the wake up at 6 a.m., smoke 6 cigarettes, and drink coffee, sit down at the laptop, and get to work, and
Huh.
hope that the muse strikes me. And I think that generally that's how you be a professional. Big fan of Steven Pressfield. There's a great book on this, The War of
Yeah.
Art. You
Yeah.
familiar with
Yeah.
it?
Resistance. Huge fan.
Battling the resistance, you can't just wait for the muse to strike on a walk or in the shower. That does happen, but I think it's with respect to treating this like your profession, even if you're just doing it as a hobby. However, I see this with fitness a lot, something that's also like another life that I live with a lot of enthusiasm. People build habits that they end up resenting, and all of a sudden, that corner of your office that you usually smoke 6 cigarettes and drink your coffee and start writing becomes like this dark, shadowy place that after a period of time, you end up fearing. And that's not such a good place to be in creatively either, because now you're just in fight or flight constantly,
Yeah.
and no good ideas come to you.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. That's actually really interesting, man. I think that's very true. I love the workout analogy. Because like what I tell people most of the time, I mean, I used to work in fitness. I was the head of content at a pretty big fitness company.
You were me,
Um,
by the way, in 9 years. I hope that I get to you. Like I don't have the hairline already. I've far receded you, but Jesus, otherwise we've kind of lived very similar lives. It's so interesting.
you're killing it. You're killing it. Yeah.
Hair
So I, I,
transplant. There we
I,
go.
I used to work in, I used to work in fitness, in marketing, and I was the head of content at this company. And, and like the secret that, we had a head of human performance, a PhD in, what was his PhD in? Just some kind of like energy systems research in the human body. Genius guy, like works with the Department of Defense on creating programs for the military. And it's like, hey man, like bang for your buck. Like you got 20 minutes. Like every person, like what's the workout going to be? He's like, most people need sixth grade PE, and it's like, what? He's like, they need to throw a ball one day and then go kick a ball another day. They need to maybe do some push-ups and walk around and interact with other people. They need to like play. Most people need 20 minutes of like good, hard play a day. And that will keep them fit to the degree that will make them more fit than most of the population and into their years. And it won't make them resent the hell out of push day and pull day and cardio day. And like that's something that just always struck with me. And I think it's to some degree like with writing, God, we got to play sometimes though. You know what I mean? Like otherwise, uh, it's just a job, and quite frankly, not a job that pays very well. So I might as well just, if I'm going to resent it, have a job that pays me better. So it is hard to find that balance.
We grow up in a system like we're in sixth grade and maybe K through 12, we have some kind of form of physical education. We go to PE, and a lot of us end up hating it. If I was a chubby kid growing up, and God, I got so much anxiety when if we had to like run the half mile, because I was just
Yeah.
like, Mom, can I not go to school today? I'm gonna have a heart attack. Probably should go run a half a mile, son, if you're gonna
Oh,
have a heart attack at 16. But there was a timeline to when that play was supposed to end. Like maybe it's 18. I don't think I even had PE in senior year. So like by 16 years old, I was done with my physical education, and that was a triumph. Like I'm so happy I've checked this box off. And furthermore, I don't see a lot of the adults that I look aspire to model the sorts of play behavior that has existed in my youth. So now I have created this like very fine line that I'm now on the other side of, that I don't exist in play world. I exist in adult world anymore. Thankfully, I found this out with fitness sooner than later, and I'm trying to model this behavior and other things that are really important to me. Don't fucking lose that child spirit, because most everything can be treated as fun, and everything should be fun if you're supposed to be doing it on a long enough timeline. Otherwise, one, what's the point? And two, you're probably never going to do it on a long enough timeline because it's not enjoyable. So, like, I'm kind of translating exactly what you're saying right now, but I hear a lot of the things that you do in your life as, how can I just make this fun? And what does that look like personally for me?
Yeah, and I think, not to God, I like not to bring everything back to parenthood. It just is the world that I live in. It is the rock that I'm currently throwing myself against. But like it is just, it works so well with your kids too. Often is it's like some things are never going to be fun and they're just going to suck. But like you have this amazing superpower as a parent to say like at any point like this thing could actually be like pretty fun. Like, whatever the thing is, whatever the chore is, whatever the task is, doing laundry. And of course, to your dad, in your dad's defense, wildly unproductive. Like, just like, hey, like making putting away the laundry a game is going to make it a lot more fun for the kids, but man, it's going to make it take an hour and a half. And so you're like, okay, well, I want to bring them in on this journey, right? I want to make it fun for them. Or I have the superpower to make things fun for them. And it does make things, being able to do that does make things easy. And then some things are just never going to be fun, and that's okay too.
How much
Yeah.
of it is making something fun? Let's take laundry as the analogy here, an example that at probably 6 years old is too young to even trust your child at not getting a stain on your clothing or getting a stain out of your clothing. But say when they reach a certain age and it's their time to figure out how to use the washer, do you tackle it from this can be fun? In my head, it's like there's basic things in life that need to be accomplished. Whether you like them or not, you should know how to do them. And like this is kind of where my brain goes, because I was super blue collar, like lower middle class family. Every like my mission in life is to be able to hire somebody to do every task that I don't want to do, and I will not give up until I am in my mansion with 17 butlers attending to me. However, I have so much confidence in myself that I know exactly what all those butlers are doing, and I could do their job. One, so I can critique them if they're not doing their jobs right. But two, I think that's a good perspective to have in life. How do you teach that to your kids?
What's funny is that it it's so much about just fostering their curiosity. So like you mentioned like, oh yeah, I mean 6 seems too young to give them the responsibility of washing their own clothes, but they all know how to, because when they were 2, they're like, God, this machine beeps and makes these fun noises, and mom and dad go over there all the time. So what does it do? And like you're like, oh shit, you're interested in this right now? Let's go. You're gonna learn how to wash clothes today. Like and so it again, it's that chance, that recognizing like, oh wait, this could be fun right now. And so like there's gonna come a time, and there are times when you're like, oh, just put fucking dishes in the dishwasher, bro. Like, come on, you know how to do that. But there's plenty of time where they're like, what is that machine that you spend all this time working with? Like, tell me how to do that. My 3-year-old now, this is another example. He saw me I make an espresso almost every day between 2 and 3. And work from home, and he's like, oh, this is an opportunity. Dad's up from his desk. This is an opportunity to me engage with dad. What's that thing he's playing with? And it's like, oh, cool. Like, I'm going to teach you how to make an espresso. You're 3. You've no context. None of this makes sense to you. These are a bunch of machines that beep and do stuff, and dad says don't touch it because it's hot, and like that kind of stuff. And it's a fun experience. And so now the daily espresso takes 10 minutes longer than it should, and that's fine. And my kid can walk through the process, you know? So like, I mean, I feel like I sort of flipped that and I dodged the question, which is like, how do you convince your kids that they need to learn how to do the hard things that are going to make their lives better? And, you know, for me so far, it has just been fostering their curiosity, giving them the time and the space and the grace to figure shit out when they're curious about it.
You said this
Yeah.
earlier too about kind of just being the shepherd to something that's destined to become what it will already become. How can a aspiring parent not be just mortified at the idea that, man, like it or not, there's not so much you can do. Like it's mostly just up to the fates for your child to be not a monster.
Oh, it's scary. I mean, there's like obviously there's like basic shit like that you got to teach them, like please, thank you, and like don't fucking hit people and like stuff like that. But also like, I mean, this is, you know, my kids go to public school. I have friends that are very passionate about homeschooling their kids, and you kind of get it because once your kid starts going to school, they're with other people for the majority of the day. They go from being with you 100% of the time to being with other people for the majority of their waking life. And at that point, like the influence of other people really starts to play out. The influence of what other people do in their homes with their kids starts to show up in how your kid behaves. And that whole process is that's when that the whole process is terrifying because you're like, wait a minute, we worked very hard not to say these kind of things in our household. Like I worked really hard for you not to say those things about other people. Like, why are we talking about other people like that? Like, where did that come from? Who are their parents? Can I call them? Like, I bet you I can beat his dad up. Like, and like the worst parts of yourself. And like, you're like, oh God, it's terrible. And then you're like, okay, if I have faith that like the groundwork that we're doing here, that like the frame of the house is good, then, you know, there's going to be some shit on the walls hung up sometimes that I don't like, and we can address them. And some of the stuff we're just going to have to live with, because we exist as humans within a society, ultimately. Like, unfortunately, like that's the case. And you need to prepare your kids for that as well, which is super important. You just can't control everything.
How much of being an only child yourself was influenced once baby number one was out that baby number two needed to come?
Dude, I was the other one. I don't know if you relate to this at all. I feel like there might be a part of you that does. So I was, as an only child, like I was cool to not ever be married. Actually, I was like, I'm cool to sit in my little corner of the sandbox, have relationships as they come. And I think I have things I really need to do in life, and I really need to focus on doing those things. And I think a relationship's really going to kind of get in the way of that and whatever. And like at the time it was like, what was I doing? I was racing bikes. I was a competitive cyclist. So like that can take as much time as you want it to take. I was on the road for like 20 hours a week. And then in my free time, I was like writing a blog that was not very good. And I was working a job, like a proper corporate 9 to 5. It was just like the shit I was doing was like actually not, you know what I mean? It was like I was whatever. And so I started dating my wife, and I started realizing that my life was significantly better with her in it than without it. And I was like, oh shit, I was wrong about this. I was more productive. I was happier. I was like, oh, I was quite wrong about this thing that I was really, really certain on. And so when we got engaged, that's kind of how engagement happened. I was like, well, dude, my life is significantly better with her in it than with her out it. So I think it would be a good idea to have her be in my life in perpetuity. Like, this didn't happen quickly, right? This happened over the course of years. And so I was like, cool. Now we are together. She was right about that thing, about her being here more than and the marriage was great. You know, I mean, we have, like any marriage, you know, it's a relationship. It has its challenges. Net positive. Net positive. She wants to have kids. And that was part of the agreement with getting married, is that the kids would be on. So we have one, and one is really good. And so like, I was like, damn. And I was in my head, I was like, we had the kid, we did the thing, like we're done. Like we made the units. This is a family. And she has 2 siblings. And so she was like, well, I've got 2 sisters. And then to her mind, like a full family of a lot of people. And I was like, well, she's been right about many of these things before. Having a kid is way better than not having a kid in my life. Not for everybody, and that's totally fine, but right now I'm really enjoying it. Like, let's do another one. And so that's kind of how we got here. So the only child thing in the back of my head is kind of the thing I was actually working against. But it is a thing when my kids fight where I'm like, you have no idea how lucky you are. You have no idea how cool it is. You have a little person that you can hang out with all the time. It's so cool. You have a buddy. I never had a buddy. So in my perception of my kids' reality, it definitely weighs heavy. But in general, it was actually the desire that I was fighting against to get here, I think.
Mhm. God, if we could only live both lives and get the perspective shift of like being the only child, so you could actually gain the just the value of what it's like to have a friend and to be looking at your parents and have somebody a buddy to commiserate with. That's what I lacked. If I was pissed off at my parents, I just had to go mope alone in my room and talk to myself. But if I had a homie to be like, yo, they're both fucked, right? And he'd be like, yeah, totally. That would be ideal. But
Yeah.
grass is always greener.
So what's one remarkable thing? So like I said, my sister is 15 years younger than me, my half sister. So she just grew up with my dad, my stepmom, and I primarily grew up with my mom, right? But there are a lot of things that, like, not to get too heavy, but like one of the hard things about being an only child that I realized, unfortunately, I think younger than most people, is that when my mom passed away, a whole world exists between two people, right? Like, that's the thing. And then when one of those people goes away, you are the arbiter and the shepherd of that world. You control that. You're the only one who holds that world because the other person who had that world is gone. And so it becomes like when my mom, I had a frantic need just to document everything about that world. And so I wrote about my youth and about all of the things, and I still do. I still have a because I know that I am the only person with whom that world exists anymore. But what's really cool about my sister is that there are things that existed in that world, but with my dad, that so we sometimes feel like we don't have a lot in common because she's much younger than me and whatever. But then it'll be like I'll say a Seinfeld joke, and she's like, "Oh my god, like you know that joke?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that was the joke that our parents made like every morning when we did blah blah blah." And she's like, "Oh my god, like we have these things," and having that buddy that you didn't know you had almost is like this crazy experience. Yeah, I don't know, it's probably very niche, but it has been a wild ride being kind of having a little bit of both, like you were mentioning.
You
Yeah.
got a taste of both sides.
Yeah.
Do you find that people who are interested in talking to you, like myself, gravitate more towards the creative side that they see in your videos and the way that you document your life, or are they more interested in the dad side, like the nitty gritty dad advice kind of things?
You know, I don't know. I talk a lot about being a parent just because it's the thing that I am doing right now. Um, I If I were to talk about just the dad stuff, I would be incredibly boring, I think, because I'm not, I'm very, very passionate about this. Um, the way that social media is right now is you're a person who does a thing. You start making content about that thing, and you build a platform around that thing that you talk about. This is actually really interesting with regards to you and I specifically. And so you build a platform in this thing, and that imbues you with a certain amount of authority. Now, you are still the same asshole without the platform. You just have a platform. You have no more authority than you did before you had the platform. But people assume, because you have the platform, that you have an authority. And with regards to fitness, maybe you're just documenting your own experience. You're saying, this is what I do for back and shoulders. This is what I do for whatever. And people take that advice as it is. With regards to parenting, people will, and actually this happens a lot in fitness. It happens so much in fitness, is that people will be like, then they're like, they realize there's an opportunity to monetize, to use that platform and that authority to make people think that they have more credibility in that field than they really do. And with regards to working out, I mean, that's, people just sell shit programs. They sell shit supplements. They say, you know what I mean? They do this whole thing. And with parenting, man, I mean, with one, the sample is your own body, which is like, okay, that's tragic that some idiot is just telling you to live in a caloric deficit indefinitely and you're hating your life. But the other is that like somebody is telling you to treat your children in a certain way, and it's like, hey, motherfucker, you've only been doing this as long as I have. You've kids that are my kids' age, and the only, you know what I mean? And so like I'm very, very shy when it comes to giving prescriptive parenting advice. I will tell you, I'm only an expert in my own experience. And so I'm more than happy to give people expert creative advice because I have been doing that for professionally for like 20 years. So like, yeah, no problem there. But like with the parenting stuff, what you'll get is a lot of anecdotes, which is because that's the thing that I'm actually good at is telling stories. I'm not actually and so what's interesting to me about you is similarly your content is this is what I tell people is that like what's interesting about what you watch with me is not the thing that I point my lens at, it's the lens that I use when I point it, right? You're interested in my lens, not the subject. And so if I point that at parenting, you're interested in parenting. Whenever I point that at jujitsu, you're interested in jujitsu. It's the perspective, not the subject. And I think you are one of these people who actually is very similar. I think it's your perspective that is interesting, not necessarily what you pointed at. And I think it's great that you're to some degree altruistic and you make content that helps young men and people figure out how they want to be adults in the world. I think that's super helpful. But I also think that if you it's not necessarily your niche. Like that is a niche that your stuff falls into. But what's interesting about you is how you make things interesting, not necessarily the subject matter of what you talk about. And it's very much how I feel.
Thank you. I think that what you are pinpointing is a huge flaw with just not just social media, just the way that humans operate. And just within the last 200 years, and as media has risen into its all-consuming form, there is a cognitive bias that exists in all of us. As soon as you put a spotlight on something, there is a perceived level of value towards it. And furthermore, there is like cotton in people's ears. As soon as you say something, they don't interpret the words how they're literally meant to be delivered, but rather as how I can perceive value from them. And if it's not exactly how I think, like you are documenting your life as a dad, but if I have different thoughts about that, different thoughts about what it's like to be a dad, I have to do some mental math in my head. Either I totally change my identity to meet yours, or I have to devalue you in the process, interpreting your anecdote as advice that you're trying to give me, and then I ridicule you, or I kind of downgrade your value in my brain so that my identity exists. That ended up being like a super armchair psychologist's explanation of social media, but it's something that I've experienced a lot and battle a lot with. Like, I'm pretty sure, and I do my best, every script that I write, every video that I make, this is just me. And I will happily take any criticism because honestly, it's just like you're a bully at that point. Like, yeah, I know my hairline's awful and you didn't like that idea, but like this is the best as I got and I'm trying to do better. Help me do better, but you're not helping me do better. Versus the guru out there who tells you this is how it should be. That's a slippery slope because it's almost more comfortable to be in.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that one of them is much easier to monetize. And that is so dangerous. Unfortunately, yeah, the one that's a little more toxic is the one that's is easier to make money off of, right?
To imagine though, what do you say to this? Because this is just me maybe only being about 8 months into this journey myself and swallowing a handful of cope pills. I think there's a longer timeline with the person who is genuinely themselves. They're speaking from anecdotal experience, not trying to be a pastor delivering a sermon so much as a documenter, just telling stories about their journey. You can acutely make money faster if you are the fitness guy selling you programs. But if you're the hero documenting their journey from fat to fit, never trying to monetize in the process, I'm much more interested. And by the end of that, or in like a year from now, I'll just give you my money because I like you, not because I want to buy anything from you. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's totally true, right? The fitness guru, that only works until enough people realize that you're selling snake oil. And so it's quick and fast, and it doesn't allow for any room for like humanity, right? Like for failure, for if you get it wrong, uh, versus coming at things with a sense of sort of like humility and curiosity. Um, yeah,
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I actually, this conversation can so easily become like these shitheads on social media complaining about social media. Like, I make my livelihood off of this. I love it. I think everything is beautiful about this. I've noticed this in myself, though, as a consumer of social media. You said the dad life, if that's all you spoke about, it'd be boring. The problem is, that is what is the quick hit. You get the most followers if you have like a very consistent POV of, I'm an aspiring father, or my baby mama's about to pop. I want to learn how to do dad life. If then I follow you because you got dad content every single day. After a month or after 6 months, I'm bored as hell to you.
yeah.
So how much of what we see, if we're going to like just paint this very generic avatar of, if you want to do social media, this is how you make money, but you're probably going to fizzle out and die eventually. Do you think that's more of a performance of this boring aspect that we're talking about, just having a singular POV and never talking about anything else?
Yeah, so I would say I'm less strategic, more selfish. So like I make things that interest me. And it's so super selfish. Where I'm like, yeah, dude, I could do the dad video every single day. But and I know there's also an archetype for that, right? Like there's like so many people that do that. And in that game you're playing in margins. You're saying like, "Oh, I want to be a 10% better version of this thing or 10% more whatever of this thing than this guy, and I have direct competition and it's very easy." And that's the job. And I think what you and I do is different. We're trying to have our cake and eat it too, where we want to wake up every day and make the video that we want to make that day, and instead of the video that makes the most financial business sense for us to make, which is back to your point a second ago about complaining about social media, is like, no, I actually, this is fucking rad. Like, I think it's so cool that I can talk about Robin and Gracie Abrams on Monday, and then talk about jujitsu on Tuesday, and then talk about building a kiddie pool in my backyard on Wednesday. Like, I love that because that's what I want to talk about that day. And I think that goes back to our idea about making time for creative space. It's like that when I sit down to do the video that day, that is the thing that I want to make a video about that day. That's the thing I'm going to make a video about that day. And I'll do the work. I'll use the tools that we have to apply to that idea. But that's the idea I want to do today, as opposed to sitting down and resenting the 6 cigarettes and cup of coffee. Like that's how I prevent myself from doing that, I think.
I was so stoked to be able to land this chat with you. And I told my lady, like, I got this interview with Blake. Do you follow him? She goes, no. What does he do? And I'm trying to describe you, like, okay, he's got this dad content, but that's like it's a pillar of his. But like he skateboards, and he's got like, he was just talking about his hair. And I was like 3 minutes of trying to describe you. I struggle with this myself because I will like walk my neighborhoods constantly, and like I'm up like at an insane hour at 4 a.m, and that's like my first enter into the void where I'm collecting my thoughts to like go write or shoot a video. I'll encounter like a 70-year-old woman along the way, and she'll ask me like, "What are you up at this hour for?" I usually just say I work from home and I got more early hours. I want a concise like I do X, so the 70-year-old woman could understand, but also like the TikToker 18-year-old understands. It's tempting to be like, oh, I make advice videos for dudes online. But then, like, if that lands in the wrong ears, they just immediately paint a picture. In the same way, it's not fair to say he makes dad content on social media. Do you have an elevator pitch for the random people that you meet?
Uh, Dude, I have a podcast answer, which is that I am attempting to make um, tempting to make adulthood seem less scary, um, which is doesn't make any fucking sense at
It's
kindergarten
good when
drop
you have
off.
an hour then to explain what the hell that means.
Yeah, yeah. And that's also what people have told me I am, which is sometimes really helpful. That's like the answer that when people are like, if I went through my DMs, just looked at them, like control F, adulthood scary, I would have just hundreds, if not thousands of hits of that. Like that's what people tell me. And so I'm like, oh, to some degree that is what I do. And so I can feel confident in saying like, and that is a nice guiding pillar. But like for the most part, when I tell people what to do, I say I'm a writer. They go, okay, cool. Like what do you work in production? Do you work in the business? Like, do you work in well, my background's in marketing and I worked at a lot of startups and that stuff. But right now I'm like, I do more sort of like creative writing, and I leave it at that. And if I need to go deeper, then and what's funny about here too, living in Los Angeles, is that you could also run into somebody and be like, oh, I'm a content creator. And they're like, oh, great. Like, who manages you? I know them. Like, where, like, that's so cool. I work with so and so, or I worked. And then you're like, oh, shit. Now I'm like elbow deep in the business. And also, like, for what you and I do, we don't actually fit into that perfectly. Like, they're like, we're not the like, hey guys, I'm going to eat 200 hot dogs in 24 hours. Like, that's not what we do.
Well, I love the mental image of you though, because like you're a handsome, fit. I thought you're more like kind of mid 30s, but you're in your 40s now too, so you don't fit immediately the archetype of what I'm picturing. If you said like I'm a content creator, my mind just starts searching, but you don't really immediately get lumped into a category. If, however, I got like a nice pump and I've got sunscreen on me after a long walk after the gym, and I meet somebody in the grocery store, immediately it's like, oh, you're just one of those assholes who's like trying to sell me creatine online. Or if I'm looking like this, like I don't really know how I look. I won't even interpret how I look right now. Trying to get free plastic surgery for his eye bags.
Oh, come on.
It's it's easy though, like to be. I kind of depending on how cheeky I am in the day or who I'm encountering. It'll be like, oh, I'm an influencer, and I kind of just leave it at that because I enjoy it. Like I have lived many lives. I did 15 years in the film industry. I'll happily wear that content creator badge of honor, but out of respect for, geez, not for myself, but when I watch your content, it's layered. It's like you're doing God's work, son. Like you
Oh,
are very much the father that is missing in this generation, but also I couldn't agree more with. I I thought we were kind of closer to the same age, but like I want to be you, dude. Like you make the next step of this life of adulthood look so much more accessible and fun. And that seems like you can't really wrap that up in a nice little title.
yeah, that's so kind of you to say. Yeah, man, how do I even first thank you. I'll take that. And I appreciate that. I'll carry that with me for a while. Yeah, yeah, it's hard because the other end of it is okay, so if we can't define ourselves by a thing, do we say we are a personality? Do we say we are an internet personality? And the thing that's interesting about us and the thing we sell is our personality. If you Google my name, it says Blake Kasemeier, internet personality. I am like, no, I'm not a personality. Like people don't like me. People like my perspective. And, um, but yeah, I actually think, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's hard. It's just hard to tell people who you are and what you do. Cause then you have to answer it for yourself too, which is it's still very emerging, dude. Like this is still very, very new territory. And it's constantly evolving. So yeah, yeah. I
But
think it's
like
so sick that you could just tell somebody you're an influencer and just based off of your delts and your perfect V shape that they're like, "Oh yeah, you're definitely one of those influencers. Like you have the physique that just like they're like they would not question and they would be so surprised and shocked by how the depth and richness of your content storytelling."
and you know what? Depending on my mood that day, that might be all that I need just to have that chip on my shoulder and sleep like a happy little boy.
Yeah.
I cannot be more thankful of your time, and I know you have very important things to attend to, so I don't want to take more of it. However, I would love to continue this conversation. Maybe we grab a coffee sometime. I have not gotten to a single one of the questions that I wanted to ask you,
Oh, I'm
and
so
that is
sorry.
That is very cool because this I love the flow of this conversation. Let's end it here, though. You're not a checklist guy. If you had to write something on your checklist right now, though, what is it going to be?
Immediately for today?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is a force function. You're going to make me actually have. You're going to make me be productive today.
We're instilling new behaviors, habit
Yeah. Well,
formation.
I need to make the video for today, whatever that video is going to be. So I have to write the script, but that's kind of low on the list. My stepdad is in the backyard building a kiddie pool for the kids right now, like an above ground, almost like Doughboy. Without the pool, if the pool doesn't exist, then like the activities for the kids don't exist and the space doesn't exist for me to write the thing that I need to write. So I think that the biggest thing on my priority, the biggest list, is to go check in and make sure that the pool is getting built and that it, God bless my stepdad, but that it's safe and structurally sound. I think that's probably it. Um, yeah, and then make the video, and then write the script for the bigger video, the long form video that I'm working on. And then I'm giving a speech presentation next week on the art of noticing. So it's work on that deck. And then by that time, we will be in dinner and baths and playing with the kids. And then after that, I teach jujitsu at night. And so that's kind of what the list looks like. I probably should just write it down. Because right now I have an ambient sense that I need to be productive.
Impressed you were able to recall all of that, though, because I would need to write that down. It sounds like you got a whole day ahead of you. Thank you very much, Blake, for your time.
Michael, thank you so much for your time and for your platform, and just your kindness and generosity, man. Thank you.